It's great to see you on this beautiful, beautiful summer day. What a beauty out there, huh? Welcome to the Poetry Flash reading series. I'm Joyce Jenkins, Poetry Flash editor and director. Today we are thrilled to present poet and historian Peter Neil Carroll, and with the book launch for poet and novelist Terry Tierney. Want to remind you to visit poetryflash.org to check out our book reviews, interviews, and more, and to find upcoming news about our readings, Poetry Flash events, and other literary events in California all across the state. Feel free to send us your calendar listings. If you're reading somewhere or giving a workshop, email it to Poetry Flash and we'll feature it in the calendar. If you would like to receive emails about our events, please put your email on our analog clipboard over here on the corner, and that would be great. Then you'll just get in your inbox what our events are. We have copies of wonderful books here today, and they're available for purchase. We can take cards and signing after the reading. Thanks to Harold Adler and Art House Gallery, to Rosalinda Monroy and Jim LaCure from Poetry Flash, and Eric, our videographer today. Thank you. Check out our many varied videos of our readings posted on the Poetry Flash YouTube channel. And if you'd like to, you've got an extra $1 more in your pocket, and if you put it in that jug over there, that will go to helping the Art House maintain this space and maintain their generosity with Poetry Flash to host readings here. So here is Richard Silberg, associate editor of Poetry Flash, to introduce the poets.
Hi, how's everyone doing? We're sitting inside with the sun pouring down. We'll have hopefully many more days of sun before winter comes. Peter Neil Carroll is going to read first, and these are his two new books, two rich books, Talking to Strangers and This Land, These People, the 50 States, including Washington, D.C. And as Joyce told you, Peter is a poet, he's a memoirist, he's an historian, he's taught history and American studies at Berkeley and Stanford, and I think the University of Minnesota, right? Creative writing at San Francisco State, my alma mater. Peter taught me everything I know. And so these two books, Talking to Strangers, goes everywhere. It goes into his childhood. It goes into meditations on inequality and racism and everything. At least it samples everything going on in these rich, screwed up country we're living in. And this country is further toward in the second book. All the states listed alphabetically, which is fun, just to, when you read them, trying to figure out what's coming next. It goes Alabama to Wyoming. Would you have known that? Alabama's first, Wyoming. Arkansas second, I think, and so forth. And it's rich, it's tasty, takes you every place you might want to go. So let's give him a warm welcome, Peter Neil Carroll.
Thank you, Richard and Joyce, for having us, and everybody else who's come. Very glad to see you all. It was a very nice introduction, but that's the guy that taught me everything I know about poetry, because all I know is that I liked it. I never studied it, and I never studied history, really, either. Nobody ever asked if I was qualified. So, let me just get into it. There's one thing about this Talking to Strangers book. I don't know if you noticed, the photograph is set in a New York bar. And the photographer of that, Jeanette Ferrari, is someone I know very well. And she gave us that. But why I bring that up is because the original concept for this was to do something akin to street photography. And the French photographers say, what you really have to do when you take pictures in the street is find a decisive moment, and everything follows from that. So that kid who's halfway up in the air, and you see him doing a somersault, and his mother has got a look on her face, that's the decisive moment. And I try to do these poems spontaneously like that as I travel around, and I travel way too much. So this is called Talking to Strangers. I like talking to strangers when I travel. They'll limit my curiosity to chit-chat. So yesterday on the plane to New York, I noticed a light-haired flight attendant whose Irish face reminded me of Caroline Kennedy. I asked in a friendly way if she was leaving home or heading home. She stammered for a moment, frowned, trying hard to reply. It occurred to me that Caroline K. might not be as happy as she looks in magazines either. After we landed, I squeezed into a rush hour subway, everyone bulked with coats and backpacks, but a nice Caribbean woman swiveled around so I could reach a pole before the train jerked ahead. We stood smiling with our eyes, the cars lumbering, until I felt a jolt in a tunnel, and the train stopped, tossing us together, lights flickering, the motor dead. I thought we should not be meeting like this, and said it aloud. Stuck for 20 minutes, she had time to tell me about her children, 2 grown and gone, the youngest 13, who she said is obsessed with her hair, but she'll get over it. Yes, I agreed. Just as the man behind me spoke from a shadow, recommending the woman try a new conditioner he's using, prompting another voice in the dark to tout a hair salon, leading yet another passenger to Google its address. Free advice running rampant underground, we'd created a community. When the train finally reached the station, I straggled off, realizing no one had mentioned God's blessings, the creator of the universe, no doubt weary of heavenly shampoos. All this chatter left me wondering if Caroline K. had begun to color her hair. She's nobody's child anymore. This is, I'm a survivor of graduate school. And this is called How Little We Knew, which you could say about poetry. My son, facing a midlife birthday, asks why his middle name is Douglas. Why not? No one else I know needed to be named after. But news came on a gray Sunday in January. Chicago's hawk wind blowing misery off the lake. A man driving a Volkswagen on a neon-stained night had braked too late. We gathered in my flat to remember David, a graduate student. How little of him we knew. Anecdotes, nothing of the accident. His father was a professor. We didn't know of what. We were young men, a few women, no children yet. But David looked older, graying, soft-spoken with Midwest irony. How best to show our respect, our grief? Let's make a scholarship fund, someone said, though we were too poor to fund ourselves. Later we'd say his name, clinking glasses, shake heads, wonder how his girlfriend was doing. Someone said they were about to split up. Nothing was certain. When my wife became pregnant, we honored David in our son's middle initial, D. A small gesture, better than nothing. As I said, I'm from New York, you could tell that, right? Nobody thinks I'm from Sweden. I like bars in New York. This is called Wind Chill. The bitter outside keeps the place still. Just one fellow, 2 stools down, minding his business. A young couple at a corner candlelit table, speaking softly. 2 scotches, I make a trip to the John, and when I return, tuxedoed waiters are singing, "Happy birthday, dear Donna." She shuts her eyes and blows out the candles. I slip onto my stool. The lone man turns, announces loudly, "You missed the toast." "I had to pee," I explain. He gets the point and slides his highball down the bar closer. He has friends, he goes on. 2 brothers, having a contest about who can pee on the most national monuments. There are over 100. He orders another round. True story. "I'm from North Dakota," he says. "Ever been?" 5 winters, I blurt, knowing in 1 minute he'll be talking winter, not something folks treat lightly, even in July. You had to be ready. Storm windows, furnaces, snow tires, tune-ups. We talk blizzards and ice, guys driving into drifts, falling off frozen roofs, finding stiffs in the morning. I had to leave to stay alive. My new friend breathes whiskey, smirks, and says with jealous eyes, "So you're a goddamn quitter." Look who's talking, I think, but do not say. 2 geezers sitting cozy in a New York bar. And here's my friend Harry. Harry is a painter. For years, I've been trying to get a bead on my friend Harry, the painter. And yesterday, he dropped by to repair a fallen valance, for which I compliment his adroitness. And he responded by saying he was good at dropping things, including dropping out of high school to join the White Panther branch of the Black Panther Party, just as the FBI was arresting black kids by the dozens. Harry's first task was to drive 4 black women to visit their incarcerated men at an out-of-town prison. He picked them up at dawn as they were leaving an all-night lingerie party. The women settled down, passing joints for breakfast, teasing with Harry, the butt of humor about panties, stockings, and bras, until they arrived near the gates, and the women had to remove their street clothing in the car to redress in proper Muslim attire for their husbands and boyfriends. Harry enjoyed their company, and when they returned home, they invited him to a family-style spaghetti feed, where Harry shared garlic bread with many future Black Power leaders. They liked him, he liked them. But after that great meal, he knew his job had no future. And this is called Coming Clean, which has nothing to do with people who wash the floors. We knew each other as rude kids in high school, but hadn't been together for decades when we meet at an old watering hole on 54th Street. He doesn't look very different, except in the hair department, and a big chest that suggests serious physical activity or steroids. I'm clean, he says, hinting about what he'd been doing in LA. He reads the menu carefully, saying he'd come into money and orders single malt scotch for us both. He tells me stories of bodybuilding, making a film about a boxer that never got finished, sounding a bit like brag or baloney. He keeps the whiskey coming, talking sometimes as if I'm not there, but he's watching my reactions. I can tell he's getting around to something. Quite a life, I interrupt, and he stops, startled. I ask if he has anyone else he talks to. Sure, he says, you. It takes a while. He digresses to Chicago, a motel near the airport, up a flight of stairs, handing over a bag of cash, getting nothing back. The guy ran, he fired a shot, killed him. That's the punchline. I say nothing. He pays the bill with plastic. We agree we won't wait another 20 years, and we don't. At 6 a.m., my phone rings. You remember that story? Is that a question? I made it up. It was the whiskey. Whatever you say, I reply, suddenly aware that I've become the man who knows too much. And anyway, I'll read one more of these characters that I run into from time to time from talking to strangers. This is called Almost Sullen. He was quiet, almost sullen. 4 years in the Navy taught him good posture, a prudent fear of authority, easily mistaken for kissing ass. Many days we shared a lunch hour in the library basement, held ardent talks about our work in progress. Caution was his byword, anxiety his spur. His career thrived, teacher, author, TV pundit. A modest man. He didn't stay in touch. Then gossip rose, his wife left, took custody of the child. He lived alone. We met once by chance. He showed a spiritual side, Zen, yoga, an interest in sacred hymns. He lost a midlife paunch, grew a white beard, exuded gravitas, wisdom, equanimity. He surprised me last we spoke. Divulged sadness never visible, abandoned by both parents, one drunk, one too poor to keep him. How well I knew him, and not at all. So that's my roundup for strangers. There's a lot of in here, and there's some that I really love, but there's not enough time at the moment. There's a few things on the Spanish Civil War I write about a lot, the Spanish Civil War. I've got another book coming out in the spring about the Lincoln Brigade in the Spanish Civil War. That's under contract and ready to go. And this was a labor of love, this one, this land, this people. And I'm going to say right now that we're saving California for last. So, I don't know how much time I have left, but let's play, okay? It starts with aliens in Alabama. And then you start having a chance to tell me what to do. Aliens. It's what you can't see in Alabama. The kid's soccer ball hidden in a shed. Someone's mama behind a curtain, waiting for sundown to go outside. I hear the pickers fled the state. Fields red with broken tomatoes. No cook to fry a taco the white man boarded up Rico's cantina. After the preacher went, leaving the iglesias locked, thieves stole a silver chalice, baffling police. All the usual suspects had vanished. One matinee features a civil rights movie. When it goes dark at the end, no one, white or not, leaves their seat. No one wants to face the light. So I know you've been thinking heavily here. Give me a state.
North Dakota.
Pardon?
North Dakota.
North
Dakota.
North Dakota.
Right. It's a good poem.
Is that a good state?
It's a good poem.
Then do South Dakota.
You go there to South Dakota, right? Equal time. North, is that how you do it? You know, we just found a book that's called The Index, and that everybody thinks things are logical because they're in alphabetical order, A, B, C, D. But actually, that's not true. Somebody invented that idea. Before that, it could be A, F, E, J, Y, So that's progress. Okay, it's called Birds of Dakota. Old Highway 2 leads to a steel fence far off the road. Circular tracks lie in wait for the multi-warhead vehicles. Otherwise, only hayfields, cows, a silo, red barn, hills reaching to the sky. A distant train of tankers freights east. The bomb sleeps underground. Its brain, organs, vessels hardwired. A gray terminal guards the software. The officer looks at me twice, head to toe, decides to review the story of a farmer pestered by blackbirds. You see, he says, he fired 3 shots into a peach tree. A flock of helicopters landed. Soldiers asked him questions. I start over. At the airbase, a tour bus passes the runway of antique bombers. B-29, 36, 52. Glossy white Minuteman II sits 80 feet in concrete. Its warhead arms in 10 seconds. 1.2 megatons. Inside war is woven. Cable, batteries, sextants. Ghosts of warriors, physicists, engineers. The air cold, time frozen.
East South Dakota, because I like that poem.
You like South Dakota?
I like the poem.
The poem, okay. Things we missed. I should say, I go on these trips with a friend, and the same friend. And he usually is driving, and I tell him where to turn. And we've had this relationship for about 50 years, maybe. And we go on trips all the time, and we pick places that nobody goes to. Okay, things we missed. We didn't visit Rushmore, nor see the stone facade of Crazy Horse. We didn't fish for trout in blue lakes built by the Army Corps of Engineers. We ate no buffalo steak. We ate no buffalo stew. We didn't engage in conversations with bronze statues of the presidents waiting at street corners for the lights to turn green. We watched 3 brown cowbirds rise suddenly from long grass and vanish without a trace in a field of sunflowers. Most things we missed because our senses tuned to vivid cliffs and falls and fossil pits. We missed the road sign to the Lakota people's sacred center of the earth. We could not glimpse, before the age of railroad strip mines, banks, before territory and states, what had flourished and disappeared. That's an indigenous people's poem, I have to say. Where else?
Berkeley.
California, that's in California. That's the last one. I'm doing that one. Last. Next. Idaho.
Ohio.
Ohio. Oh, that's nice. Ohio. Quiet, please. That's the name of the poem. On this autumn afternoon in central Ohio, no airplanes buzz. No overloaded trucks crunch gears. The loudest sound on Main Street is a woman's voice calling, "Here we are," as she pulls open the door of the thrift shop. Down the sidewalk, a clutter of elderly women sit on stools and folding chairs, spinning wool, knitting yarn, keeping alive a culture of friendship and purposeful labor. Passing high school students speak softly so as not to disturb the trees, waiting patiently to turn color on the windless square. So still, I hear the rattle of a key ring in someone's backpack a dozen yards away. No dogs bark. The birds are quiet. Squirrels do not chatter. Hear the favorite tune is John Cage's Silent, 4 minutes, 33 seconds. Though the radio of a passing car interrupts for 10 tumultuous seconds. In fact, it's true that I see two boys, quote, talking in sign language. Then a college teacher passes my bench, her leather heels clacking in rhythm. Most everyone else goes in sneakers, and here coming back, she clacks again. Across the street, a yellow school bus looms into sight. It must be time to leave the day in peace. Oberlin, Ohio, that is.
Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C., that's a childhood poem. Got into trouble in Washington,
So we
D.C.
can say the dirty word.
Hmm?
So we can say the dirty word.
There's a dirty word? Oh, yeah, right. How I missed the White House tour. My first trip to D.C. with street corner pals. Memorial Day weekend. Someone's cousin is throwing a party. At the depot, we huddle, waiting for a guy with a goatee who, for $3 each, promises to return with pints of rye. Once aboard, he shows me a small book titled Howl, points to the word fuck in actual print. I am really impressed. America, go fuck yourself. I make friends reading the poem at the party, but the girl's furious father grabs my hair and kicks me out. I'm 15 years old, stuck in this pink driveway with Allen Ginsberg, the poems, feeling dizzy. Something my dad used to say comes to mind. Treat him like a man and he'll act like a man. The idea inspires me. I light a cigarette, trying to figure out just what a man would do now. You running out of time, or is it okay, or what? California? Oh, go on.
Go for California.
Say what?
Yeah, do California.
Use California.
Okay. Backstage. After I bought my first brown, broad-rimmed cowboy hat and came upon the 40-ish, pot-bellied horse groom brushing the sleek flank of his muscular Clydesdale stallion, an animal that would be paired with another mighty creature to pull the iconic stagecoach at the head of the Hollister parade. I knew, dude, how ridiculous I looked under the brim. Horse trailers and pickups were festooned with stars and stripes. The brass band was warming up to Sousa's thunderous march. And a microphone across the track bled patriotic greetings. The groom barely glanced, an amused look as he sized me up like someone who had parachuted from Mars onto his dry, dusty field and continued to brush the horse's luscious rump. "How many hands?" I asked, which brought a pause to his label. He asked where I was from. "San Francisco," I admitted, confirming his suspicion. Slowly, without malice, he said, "Welcome to America." So, Quay, thank you. Thank you.
Peter Neil Carroll. Okay. Right. Okay, our next reader is Terry Tierney, and this is his new novel, The Bridge on Bear River. We've got two of his other books, The Poet's Garage, which is obviously a poetry book, and Lucky Ride, which is a Vietnam novel, right? I haven't read that. But this is an enormously entertaining book. It's got a hero, Kurt, who is an ex-Marine, and he's a vulnerable hero. He's a big guy, he's a strong guy, he's a fighter, and he goes through an impressive number of women in the book, but he's very frank about it. He loses as much as he wins, and he meditates on trying to get free of Debbie, the sex goddess of my mother's. There's a bar in the book called My Mother's Place, which I think is invented, you say. But there's an engaging cast of characters there. There's Artie, who is an amputee. He's lost a leg. He stores. There's a tremendous amount of drinking in this book. Pictures of Genesee ale, and Artie he stores the ale in his prosthetic, in his wooden leg. There's Carl, a newspaper writer who has a theory, 3 pillars: sex, power, and money. And if you get one, you can then get the others. And you can work that out for yourself. It's an intriguing theory. There's a lot of fighting. There are a lot of wonderful characters. So I'm talking too much, but let's give him a warm welcome, Terry Tierney.
Thank you, Richard. That was a wonderful introduction, and I really appreciate it. And I really enjoyed listening to Peter. Thank you so much for the great poems, Peter. And also thanks to Joyce, of course, and Art House, and Poetry Flash. So as Richard mentioned, this novel is set in Reagan era, upstate New York. And I'm going to start at the beginning. I'm going to read from the right at the beginning. The first story in the novel is called The End of the World. I hear about the end of the world from my landlady. Chelsea wakes me up on Saturday morning with a knock on my door, standing there smirking with an ironic detached look in her eyes, the expression she wears when she collects the rent. She leans against the door frame with one hand behind her head, like Betty Grable in a World War II pinup, except she has thick dark hair and round steel-rimmed glasses. Her massive gray sweater flows down her shoulders and torso until it dams up on her hips. The sweater's large enough to fit a much taller person, like me, and it makes her look bohemian, a beatnik Betty Grable. Fresh out of bed with my overnight beard, I look like a furloughed soldier on a victory binge. Come on, Kurt, I have something to show you upstairs. Chelsea steps over the threshold and waits while I pull on my blue jeans and sneakers. She scales the stairs to her apartment as if she's on a mission. I follow closely, running my hand along the rail like a climber, feeling the edge of a cliff. It's the African violets, she says, unlocking her door and pointing across the room. A strange red tinge emanates from the edges of the petals. I tiptoe across the room and lean over for a closer look. Wow, they seem radioactive, I say, drawing back at the thought and pushing my crouched frame into Chelsea, who's standing directly behind me. But if they're radioactive, they'd be dead already. Maybe it's Agent Orange or volcanic ash from St. Helens, she suggests. Binghamton's pretty far from St. Helens. But the mention of St. Helens makes me wonder about local volcanic activity, unlikely but plausible. The red rims on the delicate petals pulsate, and the African violets swell, inflated by some unknown power. Mesmerized by the pink glow, I begin to sweat, and my muscles contract as if I'm going into a fit. A shiver runs up my spine. Chelsea hums Chopin's Etude in E, her favorite melody, while stroking the inside seam with my blue jeans. I turn to face her and drape my arms over her shoulders. Have you tried phosphorus? I ask. Phosphorus has nothing to do with it. Maybe it's a volcano, I suggest. Chelsea responds with a coy smile and pulls my head down for a long kiss. I think it's your Celtic good looks, she whispers, inserting a warm tongue in my ear. Through a wash of seductive white noise, I recall the running banter we carried on for weeks about my girlfriend Mona, whom Chelsea compares to Lolita. She claims Mona suffers corruption in the flower of her youth because of me. Chelsea even read the novel to sharpen her barbs. I lean back into the long nails she drags along the base of my spine, dipping under my thermal undershirt. Catching my eye, she blinks with the perky wide-eyed gleam she often uses to imitate Mona, and I shake my head, securing a lock of hair behind her ear. You might cure me at younger women, I say in self-defense. I haven't been to the playground in weeks. Days. I glance sideways, momentarily distracted by the pink petals on the edge of my vision. Such a martyr, she says. What about the African violets? I ask quietly, as if they might be listening. Oh, they're that way because the world's coming to an end. She guides me toward the bedroom. How do you know? It's just something I know from looking at them, a feeling that something significant is about to happen. Don't you think something's about to happen? She pulls off her sweater and smiles in an odd way that suggests a measure of seriousness. I eye her navel as we flop on the bed. Aren't you afraid of the world ending? No, should I be? During the past few weeks, we often talked about making love, but our conversations always remained in the third person. We talked about characters making love in movies and love-making episodes in each of our past lives, as if they were movies. We talked about Brigitte Bardot seducing an Olympic athlete in a French chateau, and Robert Redford cornering Catherine Ross in a shack in Arizona. We even discussed high school kids dry humping at the drive-in, and me seducing Mona in the back seat of my old Ford Galaxy, which I never did. After we considered everyone making love in every position, it became obvious it would take a natural catastrophe to break through the third-person barrier we'd constructed between us. We avoided each other for several days until the African violets intervened. Making love near mutated African violets on the last day of the world was a possibility we never discussed. After our weeks of lengthy dialogue, we embraced quietly and intensely the thrill of our first encounter, enhanced by a deep sense of recognition, like a reunion after a long separation. Afterwards, we recline with exhaustion and relief that our talking about sex has finally been resolved. I feel the glow of the African violets spreading to my skin. But with it, I begin to wonder if I should have paid more attention to their warning. As much as I wanted this moment to happen, I might not be fully prepared for the implications. Since this is our last day on Earth, there are some things I should take care of, I whisper, staring into a tangled strand of her hair. Chelsea props her head on an elbow. What could be so important? A mission of mercy. My joints crack as I stand up and dress. Maybe I'll see you later. Maybe I won't be here. Who knows what will happen? I watch her bounce up on her toes and pull up her jeans and adjust the fit as I walk over to the door. Call me? I ask. No, she says in a drawn-out, seductive tone. You're coming back, right? I guess that depends. She playfully pushes me out the door. So that was the end of the world. As Richard mentioned, my first novel was about the effects of war, and the effects of war is a theme throughout my writing, my fiction, and also my poems. This section of the novel is I'm going to read from. It's called "Make It Home Alive," and in this section or this story, Kurt is living in a rundown apartment in an old Victorian house that's been converted into apartments, and a young couple has just moved upstairs, and they're having some marital problems, which we'll hear about. During my second beer, the yelling begins upstairs. I try to block it out, but when I hear a loud smash of breaking glass and Donna crying, I stride toward my front door, intending to check on her. I hear footsteps running down the stairs, followed by a loud knock. I snatch open the door. Charles stands in front of me, holding a gun. The barrel points to the floor, his finger on the trigger. He breathes hard, his face burning red. He squints up at me, tilting his head, his lips quivering. Donna told me. I nod my head slowly, glimpsing the gun and trying to keep his eye, wondering how much Donna revealed. He might think I'm the one banging his wife. I recognize the service issue 45 and check the safety latch, partially hidden by his thumb. The gun is ready to fire, but he hasn't shot me yet. Charles looks down at the pistol and tilts his head the other way. A tear rolls down his cheek. He breaks into sobs, rocking his shoulders, his hand firm on the 45. Maybe you should give me the gun, I say in a soft tone. He shakes his head. I can't do that. He raises the gun to his chest, opening his palm and studying the dull black steel. I want to know where that Rich is. He's not here. I wave him in, pointing toward the kitchen and waiting for him to walk ahead of me. He carries the gun flat against his white t-shirt like a dinner plate, but his index finger remains on the trigger. I pull out a chair for him and he flops down, releasing the gun from his hand like a hot iron, dropping it on the table with a thud. I have beer, coffee, and water. I force a smile. He wipes his eyes in his shirt sleeves. And I have ice cream and donuts. Those damn donuts! I watch his face in his 45 as I retreat to the stove to warm up coffee. Donna keeps him supplied with day-old donuts from her job at Dunkin' Donuts, and I sometimes get the overflow. He lowers his head above the gun and shudders with a quick sob. I'm gonna kill that son of a bitch. He ain't worth it. Charles jumps to his feet. He deserves worse. Maybe, but you need to think about yourself. I hold his bloodshot eyes. And think about Donna. Gritting his teeth, he rolls his neck and takes a couple of deep breaths like he's trying to relax. But his shoulders sag back down. She's fine. I didn't mean to hit her the other night. I shouldn't have done it. He walks to the stove and stares at the heating percolator. I hate myself. I study him for an awkward moment. The coffee's only a day old, I tell him, and I have free milk from the dairy if you take it that way. I should kill myself. That's what I should do. Then Donna would have nothing. She's got rich. He won't last. Charles peers at the ceiling like he's trying to probe Donna's mind through the joists and floorboards. Coffee? I hold up my coffee cup and he sits down. I fill the cups and take a sip. Less burned than I expected, I say. I point my chin at his gun. Where'd you get that .45? Army surplus. He looks at me. You know guns? I was in the military. He pauses for a second and drops his eyes. I didn't know. No one does, except my boss. I smirk. Well, I take that back. I put it on my application at the dairy, so now everyone knows. Charles straightens his shoulders. I'm in the National Guard. He studies my face. I sense him clicking off the difference in our ages. Did you go to Nam? I fetch a bag of donuts from the cupboard. I never talk about the war, but I hope I can distract him from his .45. Yeah, I was in country. He says, I wish I went to Vietnam. No, you don't. Yes, I do. Charles jerks his head up and down. My cousin told me about it. He lied. My chair scrapes the linoleum floor when I sit back down. He should have told you the war was about staying alive and keeping your friends alive. Nothing else. Charles squints at me unbelieving. He watches me empty the bag of donuts, one glazed, one with sugar, and one with chocolate frosting. He raises his eyes, still doubtful. He reminds me of a young private fresh from boot camp, starched and secure in his beliefs. A lot like me the first few weeks. Let me tell you something. I sip the bitter coffee and lean forward in my chair. I was a Marine. During my last tour, we got a new lieutenant who wanted a medal. So he sent us out on extra patrols. He had no idea what he was doing other than getting us killed. We all hated him. I chugged the rest of my coffee, my fingers quivering at the memory. During night watch, it was my job to pick targets for the nightly mortar barrage and give them to the duty officer. One night, I put the coordinates for his hut on my list. He transferred the next day. Charles stares at me like I'm a ghost. The company commander was mad as hell and said he would court-martial me, but I never heard any more about it. The officers hated that bastard too. I grab the glazed donut and rip it in half. Some nights, I imagine my coordinates were the old men who sent us there. LBJ, McNamara, Nixon. If I were there now, I'd have coordinates for Ronald Reagan. I raise my empty cup. But I didn't kill any of them. I slam the cup down harder than I intend, shaking the steel table. If I end up dead or stuck in jail, they win. I look Charles in the eye. If I make it home alive, I win. Charles breaks my stare, his hand fumbling to pick up a piece of glazed donut, running it in his fingers. They don't know you won. I know. I stand up to refill my coffee cup. I don't care what they think. Charles rolls a piece of donut into a little ball. He pops it in his mouth and gathers the fallen sugar into a pile. I don't know some of the men you hate, but Ronald Reagan's a good man. You're thinking about the movie star cowboy. I shake my head. Now he threatens war every day, and he only cares about rich people. Wait until they have layoffs at Agway. They're talking about it. Yep, same with the dairy. I dunk a piece of donut into my coffee and watch the oil slick spread. We sit there for several minutes, sipping our coffee and picking at donuts. Charles looks up from the table. Dawn's been talking to your girlfriend. They went shopping. He breaks into a half smile and stands up. Yeah, Angie likes Donna. Just don't tell her she's my girlfriend. His face is still gleaming pink, though a few shades lighter. Checking the wall clock, he says, I better get ready for work. He clicks on the safety and slides the gun into his jeans. Thank you for the coffee. I show him the door and retrieve a fresh can of Genesee. I listen upstairs, and the rest of the evening is quiet until I hear Charles descend the stairs for his shift. By that time, I'm pacing the floor, walking from kitchen to living room and bedroom and back again. I'm wired from the coffee, but I know it's more than that. I stop for a few breaths and walk some more, trying to shake off the tension of his visit and my unwanted memories of the jungle. Long after Charles leaves, I still see faces and coordinates. One sip of beer and one step at a time, I finally make it home again. Thanks. I'd like to, if I have time, I'd like to share one more short section. A little bit, this one has a little bit lighter tone. So in this point in the novel, Chelsea, of course, is long gone. She's gone back to New York City. And Kurt is working at the dairy. He got fired for drinking, and he managed to get his job back. He's been back now for a couple of months. There's going to be some mention of punch cards, and this is the 1980s, and back then computers were run by punch cards. This is called Message from the Vampire. A loud ring shatters my sleep, growing louder with each cycle, like a police car racing up the street. I stagger to the living room, kicking a beer can out of the way. The wall clock reads 12:35. I snatch the telephone and hear a woman cry, bubbling over with short breaths between sobs, drowning her words. I expect a different call waking me up. Julie, my mentor in accounting, warned me that if I screwed up my punch card input, I might get a call from the vampire, the computer operator who runs the accounting jobs overnight. My key punch skills are suspect, but not enough to make a vampire cry. I wait for the sobs to shorten, the breaths deepen. Kurt here. I'm so sorry, the woman says hoarsely before rising in another crescendo. I try to identify her voice. Gloria, she spurts out before I ask. Bill's wife. It takes me a few seconds to match the name with Sherman. No one calls him Bill at work, though I remember her calling him Bill when he invited me home to dinner last week to celebrate my new assignment. I'm so sorry to call you. Maybe he'll listen to you. She swallows back her tears. He thinks a lot of you. What's wrong, I ask, suspecting the answer. Sherman's affair with Julie has been the headline of dairy gossip for weeks. This morning in the break room, my friend Renee leaned across the steel table, her white apron smeared with ice cream, smelling like a carton of Neapolitan, whispering that Sherman and Julie were spied holding hands at Kmart. He hasn't come home yet, Gloria sniffles between words. The sheer bulk of the tension between my boss and Julie has been an easy source of jokes, like my telling Renee this morning that their combined quarter ton was heavier than the daily run of ice cream. Our laughter now hollow echoes. I don't know where he is. Everyone knows where he is, Gloria counters, her tone turning to anger. Do you remember Marshall? A curly towhead, Sherman's young son, took a liking to me, his new toy. He's proud of his tomatoes. He waited at the door all night with his basket, waiting for his daddy to take him outside to pick his tomatoes. I'm so sorry I called you. I hardly know you, she resumes crying. Why would he want to break up our marriage and leave his 2 kids? I shake my head, unsure what to say. I'm taking the kids back to Washington. I feel the weight of Sherman's affair pulling me down. Will you talk to him and remind him we love him? Marshall and Sheila love him? She takes a deep breath. I love him more than anything. I don't know who else to call. Gloria, I feel horrible, but I don't see how I can change anything. He respects you. He would listen to you. She takes another deep breath. He would respect you for talking to him. No, I'm thinking, he might fire me for good. My employment is fragile. Less than 2 months after he fired me for drinking, he hired me back. Then he gave me a chance to learn computer skills for recording shipments after my shift, provided I stay out of trouble. Gloria treats my silence as a maybe. Please, Kurt, I trust you. I pull the receiver away from my head, feeling the blood rush to my ear. I hold it sideways in front of my face, like the jaw of a trap, before turning it over in my other ear and whispering, I can't promise anything. Just talk to him, thank you. When I drop the phone in the cradle, I know I should go back to bed, but I head to the kitchen. I slide a can of Genesee out of the refrigerator and pop the top, throwing back a long swallow and thumping the door closed. The phone rings again. Why would Gloria call me back? Did I wake you up? Asks another female voice. I hear the whir of machinery and air conditioning. I'm already awake. Me too. It's Angie, the computer operator. Hi, Angie, I say uncertainly. This is the call Julie warned me about. Your input job failed, and I fixed it. I want to show you what I did. I followed the manual. We all make mistakes. I get in around 6. I start at 7. 6 p.m., she says emphatically. Sure, anything for the dairy. What a trooper, she says with feigned enthusiasm. Time to run the backup. Hanging up the phone, I chug my beer and head back to bed. I have a big day tomorrow. First, I tell my boss to stop boning Julie, and then I go down to the morgue and meet the vampire. Thank you. We have time for any questions?
We don't usually do that, but if anybody, does anyone have a question?
I'd be glad to answer any
Terry
questions, or
for
if anybody
Peter?
has any questions about what I read or about the novel. But if not, that's
Not our
fine.
usual format, but we're being spontaneous.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. But good, huh? Yeah.
But if you think of a question, you can ask him over refreshments. Back at the table in the back, there's various little treats there for you. And please check the table. Please take a look at the books. And thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks to these two wonderful writers, Peter Neil Carroll and Terry Tierney. Thank you so much.